Okay, it looks like most people are connected. Oh, there's one more person connecting. I think then probably I'll introduce myself and get started then. Uh, so my name is Alex Ditzel, and I am the founder and current chairman of Gogec, which is the global open genetic engineering competition. So what I plan to do today is I'll give a talk about what Gogec is and kind of what I view as some of the main barriers for entry for synthetic biology and the importance of synthetic biology education. And then we can have a discussion after that. And I'll need to leave probably 5 minutes before the hour. So because I have something else to do after this, but I think that should be plenty of time, and I think we can have time for discussion and questions and to talk about it. Because
Yeah,
certainly, this is something that I'd love to get lots of people participating in. Okay.
that's perfect, Alex. Thank you. Please
Mhm.
go ahead.
Okay. So to get started, I'm talking about creating accessible synthetic biology education with Gogec, as I mentioned. So So to start with, synthetic biology is a globally important topic. So right now, most of the research in synthetic biology is done in kind of three main regions, which is North America, Europe, and Asia. But despite that, it's a topic that has tremendous importance all around the world. In Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, lots of different places, because of topics like agriculture, healthcare, environmental changes, and manufacturing, which are important to the economies and development of countries around the world. So, despite the fact that currently the research is mainly focused on certain areas, it seems
Biology
incredibly
webinar.
important to be able to make it more globally diverse in terms of who's able to work on it. So, in particular, in Africa, relevant to this, uh, synthetic biology has a lot of potential in the region to increase economic growth and especially in moving towards kind of higher value industries from basic manufacturing, being able to develop these innovation-based industries that are extremely important for a strong economy. In addition to solving local issues that are particularly important in Africa, such as environmental issues and agricultural issues, and adapting to things like climate change and stuff like that. And especially empowering African scientists through kind of this development in a new field where there's a lot of opportunity to create new discoveries is very important, I think. And SynBio education is a really great method to get people interested in synthetic biology. I feel like I'm probably kind of preaching to the choir here, given the nature of this group, but synthetic biology education is really a great way for students, even if they don't end up working in synthetic biology, to learn science and research skills because they need to develop ways to solve problems and learn research skills that are broadly applicable throughout biology. You'll learn a lot of molecular biology, you can learn biochemistry, you can learn a lot of these things that aren't just applicable to synthetic biology. And since it's so interdisciplinary, it involves computational stuff, it involves engineering stuff, then you don't need to be tied down to one thing. You can just learn whatever skills are very relevant to you. And also because of its emerging economic importance as a field with a lot of potential growth in the future, it's very important. It's very useful for people to work towards it, to move towards high skill, highly educated work, and that sort of value creation, and especially in terms of making that useful in their local context. So, a very important part of synthetic biology education right now is are these synthetic biology SynBio competitions. So obviously the most well-known one is iGEM. Then there are some other ones like IDEC, and these provide a number of really great benefits to the teams that compete in them. They provide networking with like-minded scientists, which is really important to be able to connect with other people from around the world who you're able to connect with and discuss your ideas with, and then get the right connections for future work with, potentially for collaborations, learn what's going on in the field, is just really great for building those sort of connections. You also get great feedback on the work you're doing. So if you make a project, then you can get feedback from judges. You can learn, what are you doing wrong? What are things you could be doing better? Because often if you're a student, you might not realize that you're doing something that isn't quite the optimal way to do it. So it's really important to get that feedback from very experienced people in the field. And it gives you a great opportunity to showcase your research, especially if you normally would just be meeting people from maybe your school or your area or something like that. But being able to show it off on this global stage can be really great if you want to spin it off into future research, you want to just connect with people. It's just really important to be able to show off what you're actually doing to people from around the world. However, these competitions tend to be either specialized in terms of either their subject area, like IDEC, which is specifically directed evolution, or region locked, where it's particularly maybe in Australia or something like that, or they're very expensive, like in the case of iGEM, where the cost can be very prohibitive for people to compete. So that brings me to what we view as the three main barriers to entry for these sort of synthetic biology competitions, and therefore a major part of synthetic biology education for students. First is just money directly. So this is registration fees, travel fees, all that sort of stuff. If you need to buy a plane ticket to Europe and then pay thousands of dollars of registration fees, that's just going to be extremely prohibitive. No matter where you're from, it's just that can just be a limitation. Next is lab resources. So sometimes people know what they want to do, but they just don't have the resources in their lab to actually to do the bioengineering work they want to do or something like that. And because of that, they're not able to compete in something that really requires them to have a lab like that. And third is educational resources, where maybe they're interested in the topic, but they don't have any way of building up the expertise and knowledge that would be necessary in order to actually get into the field and start competing. So at Gogec, we aim to tackle all of these, though I think some of them more directly than others. So what is Gogec? Because I mentioned it a couple times, but it's fairly small, so I expect some of you might have heard of it, some of you might have not. So Gogec is a global, meaning that we're focusing not on a particular region, but on the entire world and connecting everyone interested in synthetic biology. Open. So we have a focus on particularly accessibility and openness in science. So we want all the work to be available, and we want anyone who wants to compete to be able to compete and get access to the benefits of competing in a competition like this. Genetic engineering, so kind of, synthetic biology related to that sort of thing. We don't only accept genetic engineering projects, but it helps the acronym. And competition, so it's a competition between the teams that are competing. And here's our cute little gecko logo. So our mission in particular is to make sure the students are able to focus their resources and their effort not on raising money or worrying about things like that, but being able to actually learn the science, finish their project, and see where that's able to take them, and connect them to their peers throughout the world, and help them find fellow scientists, and really focus on their learning and education and the work that they're doing. So pretty directly to tackle the money issue, Gogec is Gogec is free, but in comparison, some of the other competitions are quite expensive. So iGEM costs 8,500 to 9,500 depending on how late you register, not including flight and accommodations in Paris for the giant jamboree. And for comparison, here are some of the annual salaries of countries that have competed in Gogec in the past year. So in Uganda, it's 8,250. So it's effectively an entire average annual salary to compete in iGEM. In India, it's 4,630. So the entire annual salary is only half of what you would need to register for iGEM. And in Indonesia, it's 9,260. So again, about a full year worth of someone's salary in order to compete in this competition, which I think that you're all aware how prohibitive that can be in terms of allowing people to compete. Whereas Gogec is totally free to register for, and not just free to register, but because it's totally virtual, there are no costs for flights or accommodation or traveling or anything like that. Meaning that really, if you are able to work on a project and get that done, then you're able to compete. We never want anyone to be excluded on the basis of money, that they don't have the money to attend the event or anything like that. It's also very easy to register for, and you have access to all the previous projects because we're focused on being open. And because of this, we're all volunteer driven. So we don't have enormous amounts of funds because we're not charging teams $8,000 to compete. But due to a great team of our organizing committee, great volunteer judges and speakers and all of that, who are all really interested in the topic of accessibility in science, we're able to have enough volunteers to really make the event happen, which is really great. And if any of you are interested in volunteering, then you're welcome to, because we always need more people. So Gogec has grown significantly over the past couple of years because of this. So in 2021, we had 8 teams. In 2023, that grew by 50% to 12 teams. In 2024, we're up to 15 teams, almost double what we had in our first year, only by our third competition. And in 2025, who knows how many we'll have. So registration is open now. So if you're interested, then you can register. And it's, we'll see how big it gets, but it certainly seems to be growing pretty healthily right now. And we have a really diverse set of participants from around the world, we've had teams from, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, South America, from all around, a variety of different countries, and you can see some of them represented here. But we really have accomplished our goal of not being focused to one region, but really branching out throughout the entire world. So if you compete, you can really connect with people all around the world, not just people that you would normally interact with at your school or something like that. So because of our focus on openness, we're tackling the issue of money pretty directly, and there is hopefully not too much of a problem with registering for Gogec because of money, given that it's free. So that shouldn't be too much. So what about lab resources? Well, we found that in our first year, we focused mainly on experimental projects. But what we wanted to do was enable teams to get some of the really useful benefits of synthetic biology competitions, such as the networking, such as the feedback, such as the connections, without needing to have a lab. Because we can't directly provide everyone with labs, but what we can do is create different ways for them to compete that enable anyone to be able to make a project and actually enter the competition. So there's of course the typical experimental projects where you do wet lab work and you engineer some organism or something like that. There's also computational work where you can do modeling and predictions and things like that. Or if you aren't able to do either of those, we also have a proposal category where what you do is you build up a detailed proposal of exactly the work you want to do, and then exactly how you want to do it and how you would evaluate the results from it. So from that, you can submit that, and then you'll get feedback from the judges and see what do they think, what do other people think, is this a project that's worth pursuing more, and then you can get involved even if you're not able to actually do a project in a lab. And then additionally, we're trying to partner with a variety of potential corporate sponsors who might be able to help build out lab resources for competing teams. So rather than focusing on having the sponsorships give us more money, what we want to do is return that to the teams and help them build out more and improved lab lab resources that they can use. So for example, in 2023, the top experimental team won an Opentron's OT2 pipetting robot and support for it from Opentrons. So the team IISER TVM from India won that prize and has their robot and was able to work on them. So that explains part of our goal in trying to enable more teams to have good lab resources to work with. So teams are able to compete even if they don't have a lot of money and if they don't have a lot of lab resources. So the last thing is educational resources. And this is trickier because it's a more prolonged issue where if you haven't had educational resources, it's hard for us to kind of instantaneously provide you that. We can't just remove the need for educational resources in the way that we can with money or something. So what we can do, though, is provide necessary workshops that can help improve the skills of teams along the way to submitting their project. So we have things such as an SBAL visual workshop where teams are able to learn about the SBAL visual language, the synthetic biology open language, where they can learn how to visually represent the genetic circuits that they work on in their project. And this is an industry standard that is very helpful to learn and great for being able to communicate your results. And then we're also able to have a malus analysis workshop, learning about biosecurity concerns from the EBRC. So we've had this a couple years in a row. And this is very helpful for teams, especially if you haven't previously thought about the topic of biosecurity and safety issues related to your project, where maybe you had just kind of thought of it initially like, oh, this is a cool idea, but this helps you think more deeply about certain aspects of it in a way you might have not experienced before. And ideally, we would like to host more educational workshops to make sure that teams are able to learn the necessary skills to have a great project along the way after they register for the competition. We also are exploring other potential educational paths that we can help with. For example, potentially pairing teams with expert mentors from the EBRC. We want to create a community for synthetic biology discussion where people can ask and answer questions, and building a collection of free resources for a team to use. So these are not things that are, these are things that are ongoing projects in various stages of success. But we really do want to improve the resources available for free to anyone who wants to compete, so that even if they come from an area that doesn't have a lot of great educational resources, they're still able to learn enough to actually create some sort of project and participate in the event. So we haven't quite solved that issue, of course, but it's something that is a big focus for us, and it's something that we're very interested in working towards. So we also have a view of the future of synthetic biology education, where we think that accessibility is really essential to help the field reach its potential. So, of course, it's important to the people who participate in the event, which might be some of you guys, but it's also important to the field as a whole, where really being able to get everyone who could participate to be able to participate is really important for the full development of the SynBio field, I think. And really, a lot of you guys might be the future of the field of synthetic biology. And you might not know it yet, but I think that accessibility and things like the SynBio4ALL initiative, where it gets more people involved, are really essential to being able to make that a reality. So we also view cooperation as very important towards making more advances. Because especially, as science gets more and more advanced and complicated, being able to have a group of people all working towards the same goal becomes more and more important. And also, we want to leverage technology to help with learning. So this is why we are able to do things like a fully virtual competition. And right now, that's a fairly simple one based on Zoom. But I think that there's actually a lot of potential there in ways that technology can be used beyond just having a virtual version of a normal conference, because it's freed up from the standard format of having to physically meet up. But that's definitely something to explore in the future. And what we definitely want to focus on is another thing we want to focus on is real world problems that can empower people to really solve things in their local context. So if you have something that's important to you and your community, then that's a really great thing to work on a project for and learn and get feedback and how can you solve this issue that's impacting your life and your community. So I'd like to thank everyone on our organizing committee. So that's me. There's Licia, who's here right now, actually viewing the event. There's Alicia, Jordan, Kaylee, Georgie, Pepe, and David, who do a variety of things from our web design to judging to biosafety and our financial stuff. So lots of different people helping out. And we have a great set of people who are able to volunteer. And if you're interested in volunteering, we're always looking for more help. So now I think we can enter kind of a discussion and questions and talking about the event and any interest people might have. So I encourage you to check out our website if you're interested in more details. That has things like the requirements and explanations for the rules and everything like that. And registration is now open for teams and visitors. So if you're a team and you want to register, then registration is free. So if you have a project idea and a team set up, you can register now. And if you are just interested in visiting and you don't plan to be on a team, but you kind of want to check it out, then you can register at the visitor registration link. And we'll be looking for judges soon too, in case anyone is interested in that. So, okay, so I'll open it up now, I think, if anyone has any questions.
That's a very useful information for the SynBio community in Africa here. Like the course, the ongoing course that we have right now, where like a lot of participants here are working on, we have something that we are looking up to Gogec and like try to ask them to come up with the proposal idea so that they can develop this kind of like platform in the SynBio thought process as well. And like seeing like your vision here really like boosts what is the thinking behind like how you come up with this kind of platform. So yeah, for the audience, like if you have any question, please feel free to put onto the chat if that's easy for you. Or you can also raise your hand and like unmute yourself and ask Alex about whatever question you may have as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to
Yeah,
hear from you guys because it's really cool that you're working on this course and everything.
yeah. Maybe like I can raise the first question like while we are waiting for the audience. So you mentioned that like Gogec is trying to make it open for the global community, right? So I believe that since you know decent amount of Gogec volunteers were based in the US and like the time zones make it like a little bit more difficult if you were to make it globally open. I just wonder, like, is there any pro and cons or like whatever you've been experiencing when you're trying to make this thing very global? If you can share that briefly, that would be great.
Yeah, so time zones are a major issue. So if you do the registration form, you'll notice that one thing we ask is for time zones. So when we plan the exact time for the event, we need to make sure that teams in, let's say, North America and Asia are both able to find times where they're able to present and it's comfortable for them. So if a team in India and in California are both competing, that's quite far apart. Fortunately, Europe and Africa tend to be in the middle, so it tends to not be too bad there. But especially on the far ends of the range, it's trickier. So what we do is we kind of look at the distribution of where teams are, and we try and create an overall daily schedule where there are poster presentations at the beginning and also at the end of the day. So perhaps at the end of the day, you'll have presentations from Mexico and California or something like that. But at the beginning of the day, you'll have presentations from maybe an Indonesian team or similar. That way, we're able to fit them all in. So not every team might attend the entire event, but they're able to at least find some time slot that is within a reasonable schedule for them. And yeah, again, fortunately for Africa, it's kind of in the middle of the range from North America to Asia. So Africa and Europe tends to have less of an issue with that, but particularly on the outer ranges, that is a major concern. And the other thing is communicating time zones, where we try and communicate it in kind of what the most common time zones are that are competing, but it's always it is tricky to manage it globally. But I think that it is a barrier that can be overcome. And then I
Understood.
see I got a message from Sarah, and she said, "How are proposals judged?" So proposals are judged by how valid is the idea, how well thought through is it, and so a lot of the criteria are actually similar to the normal projects or the experimental and computational projects, where there are things like project value, like how novel and useful is this project idea. There are also things like how well thought out is your plan to get results and determine if they're significant or not. So, for example, if you just say, "Oh, I want to engineer a bacteria to eat plastic," well, that can be the basis of a good idea, but you need to have details. What enzymes are you engineering into it? Okay, well, how do you know those will work? Okay, and then once you have that idea, what precise experiments are you going to do? You can't just say, "I'll put it in." You have to say, "How will we evaluate how efficient it is? How will we evaluate what works?" Potentially, you need to think about exactly what proteins you want to put in it. How do you make sure the metabolism is stable? Obviously, you can't have the answers to all of these questions because you haven't done the experiments yet. But if you can really think through all of this, then that's a big step in terms of being able to actually have a good project. And so it's not just coming up with an idea and being like, "Oh, here's an idea." It's thinking through the science that's involved in making that idea a reality. And I think that even if you aren't able to do it in a lab, that's a very valuable skill to have. So that's part of how proposals are judged. And if you want to see the exact criteria, they're actually on the website, so you can check out the website, and then we have details on exactly how many points there are for the judging criteria. And you can see the criteria are a little bit different for the experimental, the proposal, and the computational projects, because obviously they're different sorts of projects. So there's a lot of overlap for certain categories uh, like human-centered design and project value and visual design and that sort of thing, but also differences where some of them obviously, different characteristics of them. Hopefully that answers that. The next question from the chat is from Eric, who said, "Thank you, Dr. Alex. About the funding, is it complete funding that covers all the fees plus travel expenses? What is the criteria for joining Gogec?" So the thing about Gogec is we we don't fund your project, like we don't give you money, but what it is that there is no cost to register and there are no travel expenses because it's all a virtual event. So you don't need to plan out a time to travel to a different country, and you don't need to save money to travel, and you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on registering. Not because we'll give you the money to cover that, but because there's no cost in the first place. So because it's completely free, then you're able to compete without any sort of funding whatsoever. As long as you're able to create an idea and complete the project requirements, which include the four basic requirements: that you need to have a visual abstract explaining what your project is. You need to write a report that's kind of like a scientific paper, which is great for kind of learning how to do that sort of thing if you want to go into academia, or even just how to read papers and that sort of thing. You need to create a video presentation explaining your project, and then you need to attend the event and have a Q&A and virtual poster session where you explain it and answer questions by the judges. So as long as you're able to create those four things and follow the rules, such as our biosafety regulations, you can't work with like pathogens or something, but as long as you follow the rules and then are able to complete those four things, then that's all you need to compete. You don't need to have any sort of funding or anything like that. You just need to follow the basic rules on our website, complete the four requirements, and then you're able to compete in the event. Okay, then I see there's a question from Joshua. Competition room is for a team. Is there room for an individual with a project idea in a way that he or she is nurtured and guided to build a team for competition? So that's a good question. because right now we're focused on people who are able to build teams, then they can compete in the event. But if you kind of have just an idea on your own and you want to connect with people to build an event, or sorry, to build a team, then that also is really interesting. Right now, that's not really a big focus for us. One thing you could do is reach out to people potentially via like our Discord server or things like that and see if anyone is interested in coordinating and building a team that way. Um, but otherwise, we mostly leave it up to the individual teams to organize because I think that, so I wouldn't say we would never do this, but right now our focus isn't so much on organizing within or like collecting the people within a team themselves on our own because we don't really have the manpower to kind of reach out everywhere and organize all these things individually. But if you're able to build a team, which I would encourage you to do, then we give you a place to come together to present your work. I think that, yeah, I think that probably if you have, like, for example, if you have an idea for a project, but you're just an individual, then I think that it would be very valuable to try and reach out to like-minded people and find them, or reach out online and see if there's anyone who's interested. But try and find people who are there because we don't have a pre-built way to build a team if you don't have a team already. But that is something we might offer. We might be able to offer something where there's some sort of people who are interested in competing but don't have a team already, especially since it's a virtual event. That might be plausible. That's a really interesting idea. Yeah, we don't have anything like that right now, but it's something that I would consider for the future. Mhm. Any other questions or ideas from the audience?
Hey, Alex, thank you so
Mhm.
much for the wonderful presentation. My my question is, after students have participated in Gogec,
Mhm.
you go ahead to support them, like maybe publish their project, maybe connect them with networks to help them publish their project, or maybe continue working on their project to make them realities or something like that to make the project more beneficial beyond the competition level.
So right now we don't provide support for directly for publishing or anything like that. Though one thing we do is so with the pricing sort of things, I think that that can help. Where if a team is able to get, for example, the OT2 robot from OpenTrons or something, that can help them with future science because they're able to get more resources from that. And I think that that is something that's very important, being able to carry the project forward. Certainly, a lot of the value is in the competition itself and building the project, but especially for teams that have really good and worthwhile projects, being able to carry that forward into a scientific publication or potentially, depending on the project, into kind of a biotech startup or spin-off or something, that could be quite valuable. And right now, we don't have a lot for that. But what we do have is that when you compete, you'll be able to connect with judges who are all experts in the field. So they all tend to, have postgraduate degrees, often work either in the biotech industry or in academia. And I think that by being able to talk with them, you'll often find people who are very interested in your project, and then they can provide guidance if you are interested in that. So while we don't provide it directly, I think that being able to connect with people who are involved in the field can help a lot with that if you do want to carry something like that forward. Mhm. I see another question from Sarah. Are teams restricted with the number of individuals to them? So no, the answer is no, there's not a restriction. Well, so the only restriction is that it has to be more than one person because we don't want people just presenting like a research project that they just did on their own because the goal is to create a collaborative social synthetic biology environment. But as long as you have two people or 100 people, then you can compete. Any number of people is able to compete. If you have a very large team that's very distributed, that's fine. If you have a very small team of just a couple of students or a couple of friends who are interested in putting together a project, that's also fine.
Then Alex, another question.
Mhm.
Most competitions have the prizes which they give. Likewise, also Gogec has a prize from OpenTrust, the pipetting robot. But which criteria do you follow to choose the best team to win that prize?
Yeah, so okay, yeah, so the prizes vary by year with Gogec, but with the judging criteria, we try to be very explicit on. And most teams will, get one of the prizes, which is usually a, bronze, silver, gold medal, which is determined based on a score they get from the judges. So the judges follow a point-based system that is available on our website. And we also have a more detailed version of the judge handbook that we're also trying to improve this year with more examples and that sort of thing to make sure it's consistent. But basically, there are specific criteria. For example, the project value, the human-centered design, the analysis of the experimental results, these sort of things, where the judges look at them and then they say, okay, did you follow the criteria? How well did you do? And then you get a certain number of points. And then also things like, ethics and safety in order to make sure that you follow all of those regulations. And then if you're able, and then depending on the number of points you get, then you get either a gold, silver, or bronze medal. Or if you're very high scoring, you can get either one of the top category prizes, for example, top experimental, top computational, or top proposal. Or you could get a specific prize, for example, for having the best visual design. We have a special prize for that. And then we'll send out certificates to each of the teams that wins them with their team name and individual names if they request them. So you're able to show that off, which looks really great on perhaps a resume or some sort of application, or just to show off that you're able to actually carry through a synthetic biology project. So most people will be following kind of the medal system, and what we've seen is it kind of sorts into a lot of the teams end up getting silver. Some of the best teams get gold, and then a couple teams get bronze. Um, and then the only teams in the past that haven't gotten medals are ones that didn't follow some of the requirements pretty directly. But so because I think all the teams that do compete tend to put in a lot of effort. But assuming that you're able to do all that, then you can get some sort of medal. And even if you don't end up getting a physical prize, you can get the acknowledgement and certificates, which are very valuable if you want to just show off that you're able to do something. Yeah, Abhijit.
Hello, sir. So, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Now, one of my question is that while synthetic biology, we can do a good part of it in the dry lab itself. Now, my question is that how much % of dry lab is to wet lab is the maximum that can be expected? Because honestly, we don't have a lab right now. So I was thinking, I mean, we have the facility to do the dry lab part. So I was thinking how much of percentage would be acceptable, or would it even be fine if we do 100% dry lab, but still computationally relevant work?
So the answer is 100% if you want to compete in a computational category project. So if you wanted to compete in an experimental track project, then I mean that wouldn't work necessarily. But I think that really it sounds like your team is much more suited for competing as a computational project. And if you compete in the computational category, then you don't need to do any wet lab work with cells or anything like that at all. You can submit it with just modeling and like mathematical modeling and stuff like that, or whatever sort of computational work you're doing. And then that is fine for the computational track. And in fact, that's pretty much what we created that track for. If you want to do something like, oh, your project is all about you predict a structure of a protein and you do molecular dynamics with it with something else and things like that, then but you don't have a lab to test it, then that's perfect for competing in the computational category. You don't need to actually have work for that. And that category is judged appropriately. You're not judged based off of experimental results. You're judged based off of things like the validity of your computational simulations and predictions, and how useful that would be. By people who, and you'll also be assigned judges who specifically are qualified to judge computationally focused projects.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Maybe Alex, one more question.
Mhm.
Are there some specific future plans you have for specific places? I will use Africa as an example, because Africa, when you look at the rest of the competitions, the global competitions, where students benefit a lot, students get scholarships get connections which lead them to scholarships in these competitions. Students get connections which lead them to internships abroad in bigger industry and academia of more developed countries. So what is your future plan, more especially like the African students and other students maybe from Asia who are listening in right now on the call?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And I think that right now we don't have like specific plans for things we want to do in Africa, for example. But what we do want to do and what we've been actively doing is reaching out to groups like SynBio4ALL Africa, trying to build out our connections. And I think that as we become larger, especially, and more recognized and more well connected within the SynBio community, then we get more and more able to get these sort of network effects where teams that compete are able to meet judges or other people from Africa who are interested in helping them and getting them internships or other things like that. And I think that right now, our process, what we're trying to do is build out those connections for ourselves and try and increase that network. And as we do that, then the teams will benefit in addition to the judges and the people who are recruiters will probably benefit as they find more qualified students and everything. Because that's another benefit of a competition, which is that you can show off the work that you do to people who are interested in seeing it, such that if you're a recruiter, you can imagine they want to recruit the people who are actually able to get projects done, who are able to do high quality projects. And if you're able to do a project like this, then they can see the quality of your work and be familiar with it and potentially offer you an internship based on that. But yeah, so we don't have specific things that we want to do, but that's definitely an area where we're trying to actively expand. And we are reaching out to people who are well connected within each region to try and figure out kind of where the key points are to try and leverage that into connecting more and more people. So we're trying to do that, especially in area. I mean, our focuses honestly are probably areas like Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, because those are areas where we think that this sort of thing is most valuable. So those are our areas of focus right now, and we're trying to make those sort of connections. Though it's hard to say exactly what the plans will be until we have all the right people in the loop, but that's something that is happening. And as we get more organizers involved, and as we connect to more people, then more and more of that is happening. Yeah, any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, it's like one parting thought that I have was like, have you get some feedback from the people who attend the competition and see like how long do they usually prepare in advance before they get into the competition? Because that's going to be like a pretty good sense of time for like those in the call who might want to jump in.
That's a good question, and I don't have precise numbers on that because that wasn't something we asked on our survey. But that actually is a good thing to ask this year because that's a very valuable data point to have. I think that probably it now is a good time to be thinking about building a team, and I think kind of by the fall you want to have your team together and be either working on a project or have the plan all done. That way you can spend kind of the school year working on actually getting the project done. So honestly, if you're thinking about doing a project, I would say earlier is always better. It also varies depending on the type of project. So I think kind of in terms of how early in advance you need to be ready. Experimental, you want to be ready really early because you both need to plan out the project and also actually do it. And actually doing it always takes more time than you expect. So if you want to clone a plasmid into something, that just takes a lot longer than you might think it does sometimes, especially if it's your first time doing it. So if you want to do an experimental project, I encourage you to start as early as possible. Next is computational, where often you might have bugs and stuff like that, and that can take a lot of work to kind of iron out and fix. It obviously isn't as much of an issue as experimental, where you're limited by growing the cells, and if you mess something up, it might set you back weeks. Well, I mean, that can also happen if you mess something up really badly with your program. But that can take time, but isn't as necessary to do in advance. And the one that's most possible to do on short notice is definitely a proposal project where you need to have it really well thought out. But theoretically, you could just work really hard and get it all done in a very compressed period of time. Getting it done earlier and being able to revise it and improve it is much better and more likely to get you awards and everything, of course. But one thing we have seen is teams that come in planning to do an experimental project, then they aren't able to actually do it. So they kind of have this all done and they try and do the project and then just nothing works. And what they can do then is switch to the proposal track because, well, if you were actually working on this project, you do have everything already planned out. So you can submit that as a proposal. And that way, I think it's best to aim as high as you possibly can given your resources. But if things don't work out and you're not able to actually accomplish your goal, we have the proposal track as a fallback in case you need that. But honestly, now is probably a good time to be forming a team and thinking about ideas. And it sounds like you guys might be doing something like that where they kind of think about project ideas over this course. I don't know when that's happening, but if it's within the next month or two or something like that they'll be doing that, then I think that's probably pretty good timing to plan out a project and then get working on it in advance. And then by that time, you'll be working on it and you'll have the opportunity to take advantage of some of our educational seminars where they can learn about some of the things that can improve their project and how they present it. So I think honestly now is probably the ideal time to get started on that.
Thanks a lot, Alex. And then I know that like your the Gogec team is collaborating with EBRC. I'm also part of the EBRC students and postdoc board, and I think like we EBRC is like supporting the SynBio4ALL Africa a lot as well. And I think like there's a lot of room for collaborations going on. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and for the students, please like check out the Gogec website. There are a lot of like great resources out there. And you can even watch the video of like, what was the previous competition and recordings are available. There'll be an archive. So like you have to navigate a bit into the Gogec website to access those archives, but you can find that for sure. If you have any issue finding that, just let us know. Just email us at SynBio4ALL.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. So if you are interested in competing, which I hope you are, then you can look at our website, you can see the past project and see what did they do, how did they present their work. You can see kind of the papers they wrote, and especially you can look at some of the winning teams and see what those look like if you want to see what a really good project looks like. But you can also just look at all of them and see the breadth of work that people have done and get an idea for what a typical project looks like. And that can help you, figure out maybe it can help you figure out what you want to do, how you want to do it, that sort of thing. It's all available. And because all of the presentations are pre-recorded, they're all available on YouTube. So you can see, so you can't obviously attend the live session and talk to them and ask them questions. But what you can do is view a pre-prepared video they have explaining their project, see their visual abstract, which explain the project simply, and look at their project report, which is kind of like the research paper. Yeah, and I encourage all of you to participate.
Okay, thank you so much, Alex. And for the students, I have shared the link to Gogec website in the chat. You can copy that link and check on it at any time you're free. And also, I encourage you to look at the Gogec project, because if your team has not yet got a project for your final project in the SynBio4ALL intermediate course, you can check out at Gogec and you get the idea of what other teams used, and then you apply that idea. So I think for the students, please, you can ask questions if you have any question. Alex is here to answer you. If you have any question, please just type in the chat or unmute and ask a question. As we are soon concluding, because Alex,
yeah, I need to leave in a minute. So
yeah,
I think that if anyone,
Alex, in your final word.
Yeah, so I think if you have any questions or you want to connect with people, then a great place to do that is our Discord server, where we'll try and answer questions quickly. So if you're not certain about something about the competition, if there's a question that you were thinking about and you're like, oh wait, would this project qualify? Or is this allowed to in part of the event? Or how can I possibly submit this or something? You can ask that on the Discord server and it should be answered relatively quickly. And I think that it's really great that this initiative exists, and I think that it's really awesome to see so many African students participating. I think that I would love to see some projects from you guys. The computational project from Abhijit, the potentially experimental project and proposal projects. I don't know exactly what everyone is planning, but whatever you're able to do, it's always helpful for you to be able to work on something like that. And I'd be really excited to see what you have. It was really great to be here and talk with everyone. I really love the SynBio4ALL Africa initiative, because I think that there's really a lot of potential for SynBio in Africa, and it's really great to see things like this bringing some of that potential out.
Thanks a lot, Alex. I know that you have to leave. Last thing, the students, if you cannot get into Discord, you have any issue, just let us know, and we'll just connect with Alex and team and get the answer from Gogec for you. I think that's it. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Okay, awesome. Bye. I hope to hear from you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, Alex, 1 minute before you go. I want to assure you and also to request the students in your presence to participate in the 2025 Gogec competitions, and we hope that Africa this time around they will also win a pivoting robot from Opentron. Thank you so much, and thank you for your time, Alex.
Yeah, bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
All right, everyone. We'll see you again next week if you are attending the intermediate class. Other than that, have a good night.
Have a good day, everyone, and meet you on Wednesday. Thanks for attending. And before you leave, the next session will be in July, and we shall host Professor Tai Sok Moon. I think many of you have heard about Professor Tai Sok Moon. He's a great professor from US, and he has done a lot of things in line with synthetic biology. Please don't miss him. In July on 12th, he will be present here with us. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good night.
Okay.